Well, good evening. I pray the Lord is blessing you today, and I pray He will continue to bless you throughout this week. I want to talk to you today about Jacob. I finished with Revelation, gone through the Bible again, and finished Revelation and started back in Genesis again. And as I'm reading through this, it amazes me how God works. The people He uses, the things He does, they don't make sense in the flesh. They don't make sense if you look at them through fleshly eyes so many times. But God's plan is always perfect. And you hear about the blessing of Israel, God's blessed people, and it's always Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And as I'm reading through this and looking at Jacob's life, I have to shake my head. I just have to shake my head and wonder what in the world. I mean, I know God knew what He's doing. He always does, but it confuses me, confounds me sometimes when I read His Word. But it gives me hope, because I know if He can use Jacob, then He can use anybody. Because Jacob was a mess. I want to start reading Genesis 25, 21 through 34. And it says this: Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her. And she said, If all is well, why am I this way? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. Now right there, as you read about Esau and Jacob, you see that Esau physically was the stronger. Jacob he went out and hunted and fished and went outside and was a man that worked outside, strong and powerful. And Jacob was one that loved to stay in the tents and live, if it were so, the easy life. And so already it doesn't make sense. He says one will be stronger than the other. You would think it would be the opposite way around. But again, God's ways are not our ways. He said, so when her days were fulfilled for her to give birth, indeed there was twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau, which means hairy. Afterwards his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob, which means supplanter or deceitful. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So the boys grew. Esau was a skilled hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field and was very weary. And Esau said to Jacob, Please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. Therefore his name was called Edom, which means red. But Jacob said, Sell me your birthright as of this day. Again, deceitful. This guy, taking advantage of his brother who had been outside working all day, hard in the fields, and he's hungry, and he says, okay, I'll feed you, but you have to sell me your birthright. Amazing. And Esau wasn't very smart. He said, look, I'm about to die, so what profit will this birthright be to me? Then Jacob said, Swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Again, not a very wise person, just because his belly was hungry. But Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And then we go on from there, and we see how when his dad is dying, when Isaac is dying, that his mom comes to Jacob and says, go in, your dad can't see anything, so go in and be deceitful again. His mom helped him out and receive his blessing. So he cooks his stew, which Isaac had asked Esau to do. And so he goes in and cooks the stew and brings it in to him, puts some fur on his neck and his arms, and goes in to his dad and says, "Here's your stew." And Dad says, "Who is this?" He said, "Well, this is Esau." "Well, it's got the voice of Jacob." So he reached out and he touched him, and he had some of Esau's clothes on. "Well, you smell like him and you feel like him." So he gave him his blessing. Later on, when Esau came in, after working hard to find the game, kill the game, cook the stew, and to find out that his blessing had also been stolen from him. So Jacob runs off. He lives a life for many years, decides to come back. And when he's gone, again, and I don't understand how a lot of stuff works as far as it goes with breeding animals. And when I read this, I don't really understand it. I just know it worked for Jacob. Now, it may be a God thing, or it may be something that works all the time with animals. I don't know. But he decided, told Laban that I will separate the sheeps and the goats and all, and I'll take the speckled ones and the spotted ones, and you keep the pure ones. And so he goes in and in the watering troughs and the feeding places, he takes reeds that are green and cuts pieces out of them, and they're green and white and striped and all this stuff. And because they feed and because they mate in front of these, then most of them come out speckled. And Jacob once again wins because the way that he did this. And one of these days I may study that out and see what's going on there, but it's interesting. But anyway, going back to the subject, so Jacob finally gets ready to leave, and what does he do? He doesn't go to Laban and saying, you know, I've got your 2 daughters and all your grandkids, and I just think it's time for me to go home. No, he steals out in the middle of the night and takes off, again, being deceitful, living up to his name. And yet, we see, as we go on through this, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but how God used him mightily, and so mightily that when he wrestled with the Lord and with the angel of the Lord and came out victorious, that he called his name Israel, and became the father of the nations of Israel. The only good thing, if you look at it from a physical worldview, is that he bore the 12 patriarchs. Other than that, most of his life was not so great, but God used him. And so I guess the point of all of this, as I just share my heart about what I've been reading, is to let you know, and it helps me to know, that with all my faults and all my failures, all the things that I see in my life that I wish were different, that God still uses me. I tell people all the time, I'm amazed every time I think what God has done for me. He's put me as a pastor of a church, which just totally amazes me. And if you knew me growing up, it would amaze you too. But it's just amazing how God uses people, even though they're flawed, even though they're messed up. And so I want to encourage you today, don't look at your flaws, don't look at the way you're messed up. Let God take care of them, because he will. He doesn't always take them away, but he helps you to deal with your flaws and your failures. And he makes you into a different person. I am not the person that I used to be in any way, form, or fashion. And God takes those things and he lets you know, because the thing with me, and I believe it is with most people that are serving the Lord, is to understand that I can't do this. I am totally dependent on God, because I know me. I know how messed up I am. And I could not do this except for the grace of God, except for God being inside me, living inside me, his Holy Spirit living in me, changing me, making me who he wants me to be as I'm obedient to him. So take hope, and realize that no matter what your faults are, no matter what your problems are, if you will just give it to God, He'll use you. He used Jacob. Read the story. Read it all. And you'll see what I'm talking about if you don't already know. It's amazing. And if God can do it for Jacob, He's doing it for me. I'm not putting myself on the same level as Jacob, no. But He can take those things that are messed up and He can turn them around and use them for His glory. So know that God can use you for His glory if you'll just turn your heart, your life to Him. I love you, and I pray that God blesses you. Bye-bye.